Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Sandwich of Coherency. So, boy, I must tell you, we are having just one heck of a kickoff to this week, are we not? As you know, lately there's been a whole lot of hullabaloo around the Hunter Biden laptop. Now, what's interesting this whole time is that after the news broke about the laptop, tons of information came out about the laptop. The files and everything became exposed and people were able to have access to it. Now, the funny thing is that you find out that the FBI actually had the laptop for over a year. And think about this. When it was released to the public that the laptop existed because of the guy who owned the computer shop, who was, mind you, smart enough to back it up, we find out that the FBI had the laptop for over a year. And then they stated they didn't investigate it because they didn't believe it was credible. So they didn't even look at the laptop. But all you heard the entire time was how it's Russian propaganda. This whole thing is by the Russians, the Russians, the Russians, the Russians. And it's interesting to me because the videos on the laptop were of Hunter Biden. So did the Russians get a very good actor? I mean, it was absolutely insane. And you had organizations like the New York Times, the Post, and everybody, all your Democrat leaders stating that this was a Russian hoax and it was fake, to not be believed. Fake, 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 fake. And then recently the New York Times does a complete 180 and says, oh yeah, no, it's real. Yeah. The reality is they knew the whole time. And there's a whole lot coming out about this thing. And it speaks to the corruption and the compromisation of the current president. Doesn't matter how you want to spin it or how it's being spun. We've seen the video of him speaking of, basically holding the $1 billion of aid over the Ukrainians' head if they didn't fire the chief prosecutor that was investigating the whole Burisma thing. Now, there's many levels to it, and, it's being connected in many different ways, and people are looking at it different ways, but what doesn't change is the fact that what the president said, why he said it, and what it pertained to. People can come up with all kinds of inferences and whatnot, but it doesn't change the fact that he was on video stating it. He was bragging about it. And it's interesting because you had the media then turn around and trying to say that it was Trump that actually did that. How we so quickly forget. The news cycle happens so quickly and there's something new every day. Nobody really retains a lot of it, I guess, anymore. But they did try to spin that whole argument that it was Trump's fault. The Ukrainian problem was Trump's fault. And you really have people to this day who are still saying that what's happening there at this current moment is Trump's fault. No, it's not the blame of the current president and his failed policies and his gaffes and fallacies and his continued antagonization of world leaders. I mean, also the fact that he's just a buffoon. He's a potato. You have leaders that around the world who respect the United States and they understand that, despite the fact I want to do something, I should probably not do it because those motherfuckers are probably going to retaliate on those other people's behalf. But we have a president now where that's not the case. And they know we can do what we want. And there's not shit. Well, there's tons that he could do, but we know that the current president, Joe Biden, is not going to do it. You think Putin is worried about Biden? Call it a gaffe, call it what you want, but the president slipping and stating that Russia needs a regime change, that's not a mistake. He didn't make a mistake. The White House can try and cover it up, but that wasn't a mistake. He said what he said. Now, either he meant what he said, or you have to admit that he is too senile to understand what he said. And if that's the case, then you got to ask yourself, do you really want that man being able to make decisions as per the United States, especially when you're dealing with a country that is a nuclear adversary? Because he said what he said. And that could be taken as a threat. Now you've got Putin stating that he's pulling troops back from Kiev. You have reports of people saying that he's made his way to a nuclear bunker. I can't substantiate that, but I mean, it's all too much happening way too fast. And we have a current president that is not capable of the job. But in other news, we do have Volodymyr Zelensky stating that he's willing to talk with the Russians about the Ukrainian neutrality, not being a part of NATO, and not being nuclear, not having nuclear weapons. Those are talks that could easily lead to some peace. Could that have something to do with why the troops are being pulled back? I don't know. But one way or the other, the current administration is going to try and spin it as some way for them to be able to go in and do things that they shouldn't be doing anyway. Throughout all this, they want them to keep going. And it's sad. I know, look, it sounds like a bad thing to say, but money's good. And as long as the United States can keep funneling money there, they can keep borrowing money and keep spending. Because all we got to do is we can add money for the Ukraine to everything we want to pass. And as long as we have for Ukraine attached to it, nobody's going to say no. Who wants to be the a-hole who denied funding to the Ukraine in this dangerous time where they're fighting Russia? And you need to pass this as, now granted, it will give us billions of dollars for our pet projects, which have nothing to do with benefiting U.S. citizens, but actually end up costing them more money and ruining further the price of the U.S. dollar. Let's just attach it all in there because, hey, you don't want to be the a-hole that denied funding for Ukraine, do you? No, you don't want to be that guy, so just say yes. So, getting back to our president at hand and the situation with the laptop. And I'll just give a little taste of what's happening because, they had what they had was the assistant FBI director of cybersecurity. And they had him come before the Senate hearing. And I'm going to take it back to what we said before, the problem with this political speech. People think that they don't have to answer questions when they absolutely should be answering these important questions, but they give runaround answers that do nothing but actually just further make a situation unbearable. So we're going to listen to Matt Gaetz, and we're going to listen to him grill the FBI assistant cyber chief. And, the important thing is to listen to the way this guy responds. I mean, they basically just, again, we've seen it time and time again, and the reality is they just simply sent him there to...
It's a long post. He calls it...
Sorry about that. Essentially they just brought him there to be a patsy. Just say no, don't answer, don't give them anything that they could then turn around to show the fact that we have been slacking on our duties to the American people. So let's just go ahead and jump right into that.
So where is it?
the laptop?
Sir, I'm not here to talk about the laptop. I'm here to talk about the FBI cyber program.
You are the assistant director of FBI Cyber. I want to know where Hunter Biden's laptop is. Where is it?
Sir, I don't know that answer.
That is astonishing to me. Has FBI Cyber assessed whether or not Hunter Biden's laptop could be a point of vulnerability, allowing America's enemies to hurt our country?
Sir, the FBI cyber program is based off of what's codified in Title 18, Section 1030, a code which talks about computer intrusions, right, using nefarious intent.
Well, you've talked about passwords here. I mean, Hunter Biden's password on his laptop was Hunter02. He drops it off at a repair store. I'm holding the receipt from Max Computer Repair, where in December 2019, they turned over this laptop to the FBI. And what now you're telling me right here is that as the assistant director of FBI Cyber, you don't know where this is after it was turned over to you 3 years ago.
Yes, sir, that's an accurate statement.
How are Americans supposed to trust that you can protect us?
Yo, did you catch that? Yes, sir. That's an accurate statement. That's an accurate statement. 3 years after they received it, they don't know where it's at. They don't know where it's at. But people want to say, oh, it's not real. They don't. They know where it's at. Let's be honest. They know where it's at. They're not that incompetent. But they're not going to say they know where it's at, because to say they know where it's at means that they might be forced to actually do some investigation. And if they refuse to do it, then that means that Congress may have to bring in a third party.
From the next colonial pipeline, if it seems that you can't locate a laptop that was given to you 3 years ago from the first family, potentially creating vulnerabilities for our country.
Sir, it's not in the purview of my investigative responsibilities.
But that is shocking that you wouldn't, as the assistant director of cyber, know whether or not there are international business deals, kickbacks, shakedowns that are on this laptop that would make the first family suspect to some sort of compromise. Mr. Assistant Director, have you assessed whether or not the first family is compromised as a result of the Hunter Biden laptop?
Sir, as a representative of the FBI cyber program, it is not in the realm of my responsibilities to deal with the questions that you're asking me.
Has anyone at FBI cyber been asked to make assessments whether or not the laptop creates a point of vulnerability?
Sir, we have multiple lines of investigative responsibility in the FBI. They're all available in public source.
Well, I would think you'd know this one. I mean, I would think that if the president's son, who does international business deals, referencing the now president with the Chinese, with Ukrainians, I mean, have you assessed whether or not the Hunter Biden laptop gives Russia the ability to harm our country?
Sir, again, we can do this back and forth for the next couple of minutes. I don't have any information about the Hunter Biden laptop or the
But should you? I mean, you're the assistant director of FBI Cyber.
By the block and line chart, no, sir, I should not.
Who should we put in that chair to ask questions about this laptop that FBI has had for 3 years?
Sir, I'm not in a position to make a recommendation who should say.
So you don't have it. You don't know who has it. You don't know where it is. You're the assistant director. You know, earlier you talked about whether or not you were the Grant Hill or the Christian Leitner. It sounds like you're the Chris Webber trying to call a timeout when you don't have one. So I mean, who is it? Do you even know who has it? Do you know who we should put in that chair to ask these questions to?
No, sir, I don't know who has it.
Well, could you find out and tell us? You're going to have to give us briefings, thanks to Mr. Liu and Mr. Massey's question about whether or not the FBI was taking a $5 million test drive on the Pegasus system that was being used to target people in politics, people in government, people in the media, people in American life. So will you commit to give us a briefing as the assistant director of FBI Cyber as to where the laptop is, whether or not it's a point of vulnerability, whether or not the American people should wonder whether or not the first family is compromised?
Sir, I'd be happy to take your request back to our office.
He'll take the request, but let's be honest, he's not going to push it. Which is what Matt Gaetz goes on to ask him if he's going to advocate for it, and I'll be honest with you, we know that's not going to happen. because that means he's going to have to answer more questions. And a lot of them deal with incompetency. Because the thing is about that whole laptop situation, that should have been fully investigated and looked at and done during the presidential campaign. But the simple fact that it was attempted to be swept under the rug until after the election, again, that should worry people greatly. Now, there is a little bit that comes after that, and that's what you'll find very interesting, and that's what we're going to listen to real quick. It's only about a minute and 15 seconds, but we're going to listen to how Mr. Gates finishes that one out.
Contents, Chairman. I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record of this committee the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, which I'm in possession of.
I'm not. There's no objection to that.
And remember, nobody's objecting. Nobody's objecting. But this is about to get really good.
I've never had.
I will object pending further investigation.
What's the basis of that objection?
It's a unanimous consent request, and I object pending.
Very well, I have a subsequent question. Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the receipt.
It may very well be
from the Mac shop.
It may very well be entered into the record after we look at it further.
Very well, Mr. Chairman, I have a subsequent
Ms.
unanimous
Demings is now
consent.
recognized. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the receipt from the Department of
Mr.
Justice
Chairman, this is
to
Ms.
the
Demings.
Mac shop.
Am I next, or?
With that.
So what we have there is the Democrat from New York, Jerry Nadler, who is the head chair, of the House Judiciary Committee, who just objected to Matt Gaetz, entering the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop into the committee's records. Why, and they're coming up with reasons, there were no objections. And you can hear Jerry Nadler saying, I can't say no objections. Because there weren't any, but his little coach behind him was explaining how to, we're going to object until we can further investigate. So, think about this. We're going to object on the contents being entered into the record until we can further investigate, which means there's not going to be an investigation. They don't want to investigate it because it brings their whole house of cards down. They have, and this is, just the absolute signs of corruption of the Democratic Party. Those that are in charge are really corrupting it to a point to where they're pushing their own constituents away. Now, this is not to say that Republicans are perfect, because we have many Republicans that are really making their party look absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. But in this situation, I think it's really telling of their stance on this. And they will put this off. I guarantee you this will be put off unless it's pushed. The investigation will continue probably till, I don't know, after the midterm elections. I don't see them being able to put it off until after the presidential election, but I can see them putting this off until after the midterms. And the problem with that for them is that if the Republicans were smart, they would use that to expose them. They would make sure to let the American people know that the chief of the Judiciary Committee is holding up the investigation into the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop. And they should run on that and let people know they are attempting to withhold information from the public, which speaks to whether or not the First Family and the United States are compromised in some ways due to the actions of the First Family. When it comes to the idea of corruption and this and that, there was no hesitancy in doing everything that could be done on the left, and even by some on the right, to detail under a microscope everything that the former first family, the Trump family, had been doing, their business dealings, their actions, everything, every member of the family, husband, wife, daughter, sons. I mean, granted, now look, I don't think that his children, Ivanka and the other ones, should have been given jobs in the White House. I did not agree with that nepotism at all. I don't think that they deserved those positions. They were not qualified for those positions. I believe one of them actually did make some good peace deals, and I commend him for that. But that, I don't believe in that. They should not have been given those jobs. I don't deny that, But I will say that there was no limit to the investigations into the business dealings and goings on of that family. So it's a complete 180 when you have the new president and you have legitimate proof. Not speculations, but we have his damn laptop showing that there's things we need to be looking into. Except those on the left are doing everything they can to hinder such investigations from happening. You would think that with all this idea of we have to keep things transparent, that they would have gone across the board into the new administration with that ideology, but they didn't. And that is why the American people should be worried, especially when you consider the fact that they're trying to enter the contents of the laptop as evidence, and the Democrats are blocking that. Now, this last part we're going to get into is I'm going to listen to Senator Langford from Oklahoma. We're just going to listen to a little bit of what he has to say, because this is he speaks on something that we talked about the other day. And in itself is going to really have a huge effect on the nation, especially moving forward and its international policies. So let's jump into that.
The senator from Oklahoma.
Madam President, a lot of Americans are tracking day by day what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. As we watch the Russian army continue to be able to roll its way through Ukraine, and city by city, pummel innocent people, to literally shell homes, apartments, businesses, to level whole cities to the ground for the sake of Russia's aggression. This Congress and this body in particular, in the Senate, has spoken out often on this issue. Grateful that the president has engaged to be able to apply sanctions, be able to cut off purchases with Russia, to be able to slowly open up the weaponry that we're giving to the Ukrainians as they continue to ask for more. They're looking for help. And Oklahomans that I talk to want us to provide help. But it's ironic, some people may not know that while we're isolating Russia in every way that we possibly can, right now this administration is working with the Russian representatives to be our spokesman to Iran, negotiating a revised nuclear deal with Iran. We're not doing face-to-face negotiations with Iran. We're working through the Russian representative to represent our beliefs to the Iranians. Now, if anyone in this room could say they trust the Russians to represent our values at the table with Iran, please rise. Because we don't, and we shouldn't. And it makes absolutely no sense that a revised nuclear deal is being done with Iran through the Russian negotiations while Russia is currently pummeling Ukraine. I wish I could tell you that's even the worst part of this deal. Iran has a couple of things that they need to be able to get to a nuclear weapon. The two things they need are time and money. They have the technology, they have the know-how, they have the facilities, they have the advanced centrifuges. They just need time and money. And my frustration with the Iran nuclear deal that was done in the Obama administration is it gave them both time and money. It set a 10-year window where they, quote unquote, couldn't have nuclear material that would be usable for a nuclear weapon, but it allocated $100 billion in release of sanctions to the Iranians. $100 billion to the Iranian regime. Now, I have no beef with the Iranian people. They're remarkable people, extremely well educated, but they live under the thumb of a horrible regime. What did the Iranian regime do with that $100 billion that they were given? Well, we saw the advance of the war in Yemen that happened as the Iranians were supplying the Houthis to be able to attack the Saudis and the Emiratis. We saw what happened in Lebanon with the support for Hezbollah to be able to attack Israel and continue to destabilize. We saw what the Iranians did in Syria, supporting Bashar Assad and becoming his army in many areas across Syria. And that ruthless dictator is still there today because of Iranian support, because of the $100 billion that was given to Iran so they could prop up Assad and so he could stay in place. That's what happened with the $100 billion that Iran was given last time. Now, the Trump administration came in and took away that and imposed maximum pressure on the Iranians, walked away from the deal and said, we're not going to give the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world billions of dollars of access to capital. That seems like a terrible idea, and I can assure you the people of Syria understood that was a terrible idea. But now,
yeah, Joe Biden wants to continue Obama's work and get right back into it. I mean, how can anybody say that they're okay with this? Like, I don't know, anybody on the left, call yourself a Democrat or whatever that's listening, feel free to write in the comments or email us and let us know, like, why do you think this is a good idea? I know people like to say, well, it's the Iranian people can then get nuclear power and this and that. And I understand it's a tough thing, man, but I mean, it's agreed, do we really want to take that chance? Do we really want to go down that route? Do you really want to mess around and find out? Because for some reason, when dealing with the Obama administration and the Joe Biden administration, messing around and finding out has not ended well for the United States at all once. It's funny because people know Obama as the deporter-in-chief because he deported more immigrants than any other president. But he's also known as the Obama-in-chief because he dropped more missiles than any other president. And then I forget what the parameters were, but this man was destroying the Middle East. You don't hear about it, and you didn't hear about it. And this is the funny thing, is it was not in the news. You were not hearing about it. That's why many people don't know it exists. That's why many people think that Obama was all for peace and this and that. He dropped bombs, and he was killing people left and right. And guess what? Many of them were innocent children. Because guess what? They messed up a lot. But yes, killing was what he did. Obama was an absolute despicable leader for that. And there are people in many countries around the world who feel that way. And the reason they feel that way is because their whole shit got blowed up. Yeah, I said blowed up, not blown up. Boom. So this is a very interesting thing, all this big tough talk with Russia and how Russia's this, the sanctions, the evilness, all this other stuff, but you need them to do the speaking on behalf of the United States with Iran, because Iran won't talk to you because they don't like the president, like Saudi Arabia won't talk to the president, like China didn't want to talk to the president. I mean, there are leaders that you would expect to. be willing to talk and work with the United States, but because the president we have in charge, they want no parts of it. So you can't sit here and try and say that, oh, Joe Biden is just perfect. These people are just terrible and crazy. Is the whole world terrible and crazy? Are billions of people looking at how terrible the United States president is wrong? It's something to think about. There's a whole lot to think about. And don't forget about the information, Keep that in mind as we get closer to November each day. Because the time's going to come to be able to begin the repair of the United States. So get out and vote and let your voice be heard. But I thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.